All right, so everybody always likes to talk about the sneaker wars of the 90s. You had Nike going head to head versus Reebok and Adidas, which those sneaker wars still go on to this day. It's just things have kind of changed a little bit. You got Nike kind of all the way here at the top where you got everybody else kind of fighting for second place. But a few years back, things did get very interesting as we had Yeezy going head to head versus Jordan Brand. If you take it back to 2020, that's where things actually got the closest. You had Yeezy, as far as annual revenue, they brought in $1.7 billion, while Jordan Brand in 2020 brought in $3.7 billion. So if you guys recall that record where Ye was talking something like Yeezy just jumped over Jumpman, well, they didn't exactly jump over the Jumpman, but did get pretty damn close. So today we're going to take a look back here at those 2020 Yeezy releases. It was a very interesting year because this was a year where we saw Adidas turn up the amount of releases. They also added new silhouettes to the mix. So let's go ahead and take a look back here at Yeezys in 2020. Enough rambling. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So what's going on, everybody? You're watching John Alexander TV. Salute to you for tuning in. We're about to have some fun with it. We're going to hop in the time machine, take things back to 2020. Now, as far as all of these pairs right here, we're going to see these featured in no particular order, but what you have here is simply all of the Adidas Yeezy releases for 2020. Now, coming off of 2019, I would say the popularity for the 350 V2 had reached an all-time high. People were anticipating the release of the 350 V3, which we actually never got. Instead, it was renamed to the 380, but that's a whole nother story, which we're going to get into here shortly. So, of course, with the popularity of the 350 V2 peaking, Adidas had a whole bunch of plans to release new colorways here in 2020, which we have here the 350 V2 Zion, which ahead of this release, this one was highly anticipated, I guess, because back then, this one was kind of giving Turtle Dove vibes as far as like the colorway. But now that we kind of look back on it, I would say that wasn't really the case. Now, next up, we got the 700 MNVN, which this one was exciting. We had the triple black colorway. This one was exciting because this was essentially the debut of a new silhouette, which at the end of the day, happened to actually just be a redesign of the 700 B1. So these featured that new nylon upper. Those were really cool. We also had the 350 V2 natural release. That one, I guess a lot of people would look at almost like a filler release. Kind of looked like an aged version of the cream or triple white 350 V2s. And then here we got the first colorway of the 380. Now, we saw the 380 debut in late 2019, as I mentioned previously. People were anticipating the debut of the 350 V3. Instead, we got the 380, that first alien colorway. People were going nuts for it. But then in 2020, we saw Adidas start to pump out a bunch of these different colorways, including this Limonite pair, which we started to see a lot of these pairs actually brick for the first time. Seen a lot of these Yeezy releases, go for under retail. Now, as far as the next set of rows right here, we got the 350 V2 Cinder. This is when they were doing non-reflective and reflective versions. Anytime we had a 350 drop in a black colorway, they were usually a hit back then. We also had the 350 V2 Carbon, which the story about this one, this was actually one of the last 350 V2s that we saw Ye rocking on feet. Now you got the 380 Onyx, non-reflective. They were also dropping 380s in reflective and non-reflective colorways. This one had a little buzz surrounding it because people thought it was going to be like a all black 380, but then when it dropped, the hues gave off kind of like a dark purple, almost like a navy type of vibe right there. And then we had the 700 V3 Clay Brown. You see, in 2019, again, we had the 700 V3 debut, in which 2020 Adidas pumped out a whole bunch of different colorways. So as far as this Clay Brown pair, there was another black pair which dropped. So I feel like as far as this pair, a lot of people kind of looked at this one as almost like a filler type of release, if that makes sense. Now, as far as 2020, this was the year that we actually did see the Yeezy Quantum debut. And as far as this Frozen Blue one, this one had a whole bunch of buzz surrounding it because this was going to be the big holiday Yeezy release. It was coming in with this beautiful blue colorway. We did have a blue 700 V3. So I remember like the Yeezy community was really excited about this Frozen Blue pair, which they did drop in a basketball as well as a non-basketball version. But then once these actually dropped, the Quantum notoriously was known, for being one of those bricks that was always selling for under retail. Same thing goes for this teal blue colorway. I like the fact that it was kind of giving off like a 90s Charlotte Hornets vibe with that teal colorway. But again, this was one of those Quantums which were just going for under retail. A lot of people passed on them, knowing that they could just grab them for under retail. We also had the 350 V2 Fade, which this one was kind of just one of those filler releases that kind of just came and went, I would say. Same thing goes for this Israfil colorway, however you pronounce it. It was a cool little vibe, but I would say it wasn't like a must-cop release, if you guys know what I'm saying. Now, when it comes to this Desert Sage 350 V2, I remember specifically a lot of people were checking for these due to the fact that the colorway was kind of giving like Nike Yeezy vibes. But then again, as we look back on it, just like them Zions that we saw previously, looking back on it, it didn't really age that well. That wasn't really the case as far as the colorway. Now, as far as these Quantum Bariums, there was a little bit of buzz surrounding this one. This was the second Yeezy Quantum colorway that we saw drop, but again, due to the fact that these were going for under retail, a lot of people kind of like jumped ship when it comes to the hype for this release, knowing that they could get it for under retail. But this was another pair that we saw Ye rocking in a now famous picture standing next to Elon Musk. We had the 350 V2 Earth, which was kind of a sleeper hit that year, an all brown 350 V2. There was a little hint of yellow in there. So as I mentioned, there was a whole bunch of 350 V2 colorways, which we're going to see a lot more. We also had the 380 Calcite Glow, which this was the very first all glow in the dark 380. Again, there was a little bit of buzz surrounding the novelty glow-in-the-dark theme, which these did actually drop around Halloween time. But again, a lot of 380s went for under retail. But I believe, looking back on it, this was one of those 380s that kind of held its value over time until we did see like massive discounts and restocks later down the line. By the way, a lot of these pairs that we're going to look at, did eventually drop recently this year at outlets marked down for like crazy discounts. I think some pairs even went for like as low as like $40. So we talked about the 700 V3 Alba previously, the first all black 700 V3. I remember when them joints dropped, man. A lot of people were definitely rocking with those. We had the 380 Highlight, which always, for the record, I said this is one of the most disgusting Yeezy 380 colorways, but low key, the 380 kind of has its cult-like following because at the time, a lot of people were able to get these pairs for steals, and a lot of people also would say that the 380 is one of the most comfortable Yeezy models today. We got the 700 V3 Azurite, which this one had a whole bunch of buzz surrounding it, due to the beautiful shade of blue. I remember absolutely loving these and rocking the hell out of them when those joints originally dropped. We had the 380 Pepper non-reflective, which dropped in a reflective colorway as well. The Pepper pair was kind of interesting when it dropped, due to the fact that it was included with an additional red pair of laces, which definitely made that sneaker pop. Now for Yeezy slides, we did see these slide debut late 2019. So in 2020, man, they were a smash hit. In 2019, when they first dropped, they weren't an immediate hit. They were actually sitting on Yeezy supply. But then in 2020, them joints were selling for like triple, quadruple the retail price point. Any pair that dropped was a huge sellout in these cores. This brown pair, again, was no different story. We also had the 350 V2 Taillight, which I guess these ones were interesting. It was the first pair that featured like this kind of translucent upper, which then transitioned into this like bright orange pair on the back. So those were okay. I remember they were like a European exclusive, if I'm not mistaken, back when they originally dropped. We got the Mist non-reflective. I think this was the first 380 colorway that we saw drop after the debut of the Alien. This was the first kind of brick pair which went under retail, which kind of set the tone for 380s moving forward. We got the 350 V2 Marsh, which that one featured the reflective stripe. You had the nice little orange sock liner. I thought the color scheme on this one was interesting, and if I recall, this one originally released actually as a Yeezy Supply exclusive release. So that was kind of cool back then. Again, you got another pair of slides. This is the Soot, another shade of brown. This one was a little bit darker. Everybody was looking to get their hands on any color Yeezy slide at that time. We had the Sand Taupe, which I remember as being one of the more underwhelming Yeezy 350 V2 colorways, which dropped towards the end of the year. And then here we got the Yeezy Quantum, which finally made its debut after being delayed. This one released during NBA All-Star Game. There was a lot of buzz surrounding this release, especially the way that they rolled everything out with the Sherpas in Chicago. The All-Star Game that year was in Chicago. Ye was rocking these on feet. Now with the Quantum, it was a little bit confusing because they released a basketball version as well as a non-basketball version, but it felt like really none of them joints were really made for basketball. Just one kind of had a little bit of a higher cut, which I still feel like the basketball pair was still superior, but that was kind of confusing to the general consumer. We also had the 350 V2 Flags, which was pretty much an all yellow 350 V2. We saw them joints restocked time and time again. We got the 380 pepper right here. The 700 V3 Safflower, which this one was really cool. You had a little touch of yellow in there. A nice colorway for the 700 V3, which was very popular in 2020. We also had the 350 V2 Yeezy Reflective. Again, another kind of filler release. This one kind of served its purpose though when it dropped. And then we had the the 500 High. So this actually debuted this year. I think it actually debuted at the end of 2019, but then we had the official like big release in 2020. This one kind of gives off more of like a boot silhouette, and still to this day I feel like this Tyrian, or however you pronounce it, colorway is still one of the best. And I think this was actually the debut colorway, if I'm not mistaken, for the 500 High. Again, more slides. This one's earth brown, so another shade of brown. We got the 380 Mist Reflective, the Azure non-reflective, which I believe at that time Adidas was playing with doing regional exclusive drops. So I think this was one of those regional exclusive drops, which again, this is one of those pairs that we've seen kind of in outlets discounted heavily. We got the 350 V2 Linen, again, another 350. There was a whole bunch of yellow 350s, kind of filler pairs that just came and went. We had the Blue Oat non-reflective. Now, when it comes to this pair, we got the reflective, as y'all see on the end. I feel like these Blue Oats were just so crazy and out there. They were just so wild and funky that when they originally released, I remember I actually liked them. They were just that crazy, but again, went notoriously under retail. A lot of people were able to grab these down the line for a steal. We had the 350 V2 Sulfur, another shade of yellow. I think these did have like a kind of gum bottom on them. We had the 350 V2 Cinder, again, another black Yeezy. This was the reflective version. And then we had the 380 Onyx Reflective, spoke on those, the Limonite. You got more of these frozen blues. Again, they were pumping out more of these 700 MNVNs. The bone pair was cool. It was like an all white type of joint silver. I remember rocking the hell out of them joints. And then we had the debut of the Foam Runner, which I would say, looking back at all of these Yeezys, the Foam Runner would top the list as probably being the most exciting Yeezy release. I remember this was a complete shock drop when these originally debuted. I think the retail price on these when they very first dropped was like $60 or something like that, but then Adidas went ahead and bumped up the price. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that exactly, but I remember this was a complete shock drop. You know, not everybody was able to get their hands on these. I usually never was able to cop Yeezys for retail manually, but for some reason, I was actually able to grab these on Yeezy Supply. So that was a real fun one. This was the OG Ararat colorway. This was so popular that in 2021, we started to see Adidas turn things up. A whole bunch of foam runners, and still to this day, the Yeezy Foam Runner still continues to be a very popular model, even though they no longer release new pairs of these. But this is where it all started, the OG Ararat. You gotta love it. Now, we also saw the Yeezy non-reflective, the Azure reflective, the 700 MNVN orange, which I feel like I would have to put these right up there. When you look back at everything that dropped in 2020, you got the foam runners, the debut of the Quantum, that original colorway, and then I'm putting these 700 MNVN oranges as the most exciting releases of the year. I already talked about why we were excited about the MNVN, but there was just something about this orange colorway that popped. These were actually exclusive releases. I think they dropped them in like different cities, you know, throughout the world at the same time, or throughout the country at the same time. So there was a lot of excitement surrounding that release, and still actually got my pair. Well, still got all my Yeezys, but still really appreciate this one to the day. Always got it back here. You probably can't see it in the shot right here. And then we had the Highlight Glow, and then again the Phosphor pair of the 700 MNVN. So that was a great one, but as I mentioned, out of the year, the three best would go to the orange MNVN. As far as my personal favorite, the Foam Runner and the Yeezy 700 Basketball, the Quantum colorway. So that was Yeezys in 2020 in a nutshell. As I mentioned, that year Adidas turned things up a notch. This was the best year that they did as far as annual revenue, and you guys see, just because they dropped so many pairs. Now, what's interesting is, after looking back at 2020, we actually didn't see any 500s release, and we also didn't see any 700 V1s drop as well. So Adidas was kind of taking things into a new realm, but not returning with any of those classics. More so bringing in some new models. So in 2021, we did start to see those pairs actually return. So let me know, what was some of your favorite releases looking back at Adidas Yeezy releases in 2020. This was a fun little ride, jumping in the time machine, taking a look back. What a year, 2020, $1.7 billion in revenue. So if you guys want to see me do more videos like this, cover different years and everything like that, let me know by smashing the like button down below. I'm J.A. I appreciate y'all. I'll catch you guys next time. Salute.